Back in 1977, a novel by Avery Corman landed like an absolute bombshell. It seriously challenged everything society thought it knew about marriage, divorce, and what it means to be a parent. This wasn't just a story, it became a cultural flashpoint, sparking a massive national conversation that even went on to influence family law. That book, of course, was Kramer versus Kramer.
At its heart, the novel really forces us to wrestle with one single powerful question. Is being a parent something you just are? You know, a biological fact? Or is it something you do, the day in, day out, active commitment of love and care? This is the core dilemma we're going to unpack today.
So, our story kicks off with the Kramers. On the surface, they look like the perfect American family, but underneath, they're just buckling under the pressure of unspoken rules and the very traditional gender rules of the 1970s.
And here, you can really see how they are living in two completely different worlds. On one side, you've got Ted. He's this hard-charging advertising exec, totally focused on being the provider. In his mind, he's doing everything right, but he's completely, and I mean completely, blind to how miserable his wife is. And on the other side, there's Joanna. She feels trapped, suffocated, and like her own identity is just vanishing into the endless routine of being a stay-at-home mom.
And then comes the moment where that fracture just shatters everything. With these few, devastatingly simple words, Joanna walks out. She leaves her husband and their 5-year-old son, Billy, to go and find herself. The family portrait is just torn to pieces.
Joanna's exit completely throws Ted into a world he is not prepared for at all. And this is where the story's focus really shifts. It becomes about his unexpected and pretty radical transformation from a distant father into a hands-on single parent. Now, Ted's journey is not easy, not at all. It starts with just pure, unadulterated chaos. I mean, the guy can barely make breakfast, but slowly, step by step, he starts to build a routine. He figures out school drop-offs, doctor visits, all of it. And through that daily grind, he stumbles upon something incredible. A real, deep, unconditional joy in his relationship with his son.
But look, this isn't just an emotional journey for him. Ted is facing some very real, very practical hurdles. He's totally isolated in a world that, back then, just wasn't built for single dads. And the pressure just keeps mounting when his demanding job, which has zero flexibility for his new life, fires him, throwing him into a full-blown financial crisis.
And yet, through all that struggle, this incredibly powerful bond is forged. This quote just captures it perfectly. Even when Ted is completely exhausted and just needs a break, his connection to Billy has become the absolute center of his universe. He's not just the provider anymore. He's a dad, a real, nurturing, deeply engaged father. So, just as Ted and Billy finally find their rhythm, their entire world gets turned upside down again. Joanna comes back to New York, she's got a job, she's been to therapy, and now she wants her son back. And this is what sparks the central conflict of the entire story.
The courtroom basically becomes this battleground for two totally competing ideas of what it means to be a parent. Joanna's argument? It's all about tradition, about biology, this idea of the essential, natural bond between a mother and child. Ted's defense, though, is based on action and proof. He's the one who's been there, day in and day out, providing a stable, loving home.
When she's on the stand, Joanna makes this really passionate, emotional plea. And her argument taps right into this deeply held belief at the time, that a young child, by their very nature, needs their mother more than anyone else.
And then you get Ted's defense, which is the complete opposite. It's stripped of all the legal talk, all the grand theories. It's just raw, it's simple, and it comes straight from his heart. His whole case just boils down to this one simple truth, the incredible love and connection he now has with his son.
Okay, so the arguments have been made, the testimonies have been heard, and now a judge has to make a decision that is going to change 3 lives forever, forcing a choice between 2 parents who both, in their own ways, really love their child.
Ted, Joanna, we're all just waiting. The tension is just, you can feel it. The entire story has been building and building to this single moment.
And the verdict comes down, and it falls right in line with the conventional thinking of the time. The court sides with tradition, ruling in favor of Joanna. For Ted, it's just devastating. He's facing the reality of losing his son.
But then, in what has to be one of the most stunning and unforgettable twists in literature, the legal ruling suddenly doesn't matter. On the very day Joanna's supposed to pick Billy up, she witnesses this tearful, heartbreaking goodbye between father and son. She sees the depth of their bond, and she makes this incredible, selfless choice. She calls Ted and says these 3 simple words, admitting that Billy's true home is with his father.
So, the novel doesn't just wrap up with a neat personal ending. No, its impact rippled out into the real world in a huge way, fundamentally changing how we all talk about family, fatherhood, and divorce.
So, why do we still talk about this book from 1977? Well, because it gave a voice to the so-called absent father, showing that a man could absolutely be the primary nurturer. It also directly challenged a legal precedent called the tender years doctrine, which had for years given mothers almost automatic preference in custody fights. And, maybe most importantly, it just completely redefined fatherhood in our culture, opening the door for a much more involved, expansive view of what a dad's role can be. And all of that leaves us with one final thought. You know, this novel presented such a radical idea for its time. But today, when we see all kinds of evolving family structures and changing parental roles, it really makes you wonder, are the issues at the heart of this story actually settled? Or are we all still, in our own ways, fighting the battle of Kramer versus Kramer?